Hello, hello, and welcome to the online recording for the Scottish Rum Festival. We've got, how do you say it, Ron Cabezon.
That's right.
Cool. So that's a good start to it. We've got David and Fraser joining us for this little interview. Let's get straight into it, guys. David, Fraser, please tell us a little bit about your own personal history and with the brand, and how you got to this point, please.
Sure. Well, the brand was born sort of tail end of 2019. It was upon seeing some celebrities, in fact, creating their own spirits. I had the thought that what qualifies them to make a spirit. I started looking into the ins and outs of it and discovered this concept of contract distilleries, basically. And as much as I've always been a sort of, with my job being offshore and in the oil and gas industry, I've traveled a lot throughout the years, and I've always been a bit of a rum enthusiast. And it made sense, obviously, to then make a rum. And I'd always kind of thought it would be a nice idea. But upon speaking with some distilleries, we worked on a recipe and we wanted something a little bit different. So we've created what we call a botanical rum, which isn't quite clearly defined across the spirit range yet, but it's a bit of a new thing. So the idea is basically it's not quite a spiced rum, but it's not quite a sort of standard rum. It's basically we add some spices and botanicals, but then the product's then redistilled with these already inside it, so it ends up basically with a much sort of softer and smoother kind of finish. So you still get the sort of essence of a Caribbean style rum, but the with a little bit of a twist, basically. So yeah, the name, it comes. I spent a lot of time living in Spain. I was there for about 5 years, and the Cabezon is actually, it's got a double meaning. It means we've kind of taken on the pig-headed meaning for the branding, which is one side, and the other side just means big head. Cabeza means head, Cabezon's like big head, and that was my nickname from my flatmate while living in Barcelona, and so it kind of made sense to identify the brand. Also with the kind of willfully uncompromising sense of being pig-headed, looking for the best in quality, the best ingredients. But it's a bit jovial as well, so it's it seems to work well. So that's kind of where we're at. And the brand, like I say, was kind of created. The product was incepted in sort of late 2019, and it's been kind of my baby up until tail end of 2020, really, when me and Fraser are kind of old friends. Not been in touch for a long time, but upon me kind of posting on Facebook, he'd kind of piqued interest, and it's kind of went from there, and he's recently come on board as well. So yeah, that's cool. Kind of where we're at.
So development, you say, so you're redistilling like as a gin kind of process for creating the rum, but
exactly.
Selection, how much development time have you spent on this?
Well, we spent probably about 3 months developing the recipe. We've basically got we've got a rum that we use from the Caribbean. It's a blended rum. It's a 5-year aged blended rum, varying from the Dominican Republic, Jamaica, and we buy that in, and then we kind of split it because it's actually quite a dark spirit when we get it. And then we split that rum, and the botanical process goes through with the one part of it, and then we kind of blend it back with the original. Nice. And then the only thing that's added out with after the second distillation is the vanilla, because we tried it with on either side, and it felt you kind of lost the vanilla take if it's quite a soft flavor otherwise, so but yeah, everything else goes in before the second distillation, so it's yeah
very cool. So the idea of the blend, were you chasing different styles of blends? Did that take a little bit of time, or were you kind of like nail it first go?
I think we did. We tried a sort of lighter blend originally, but we felt it kind of lost the essence. We wanted to keep that the sort of golden Caribbean rum, style, you know. And we started off with a sort of golden Caribbean rum, and it ended up being a little bit too light by the end of it. So we then went for a sort of a slightly darker rum, and then ended up where we're at. Yeah. So with the way we blend it back now, it ends up being a nice golden color, and so I think it still kind of keeps the identity as a sort of golden Caribbean rum, but with a bit of a twist.
Maybe you should have a little tasting of it. So actually, I've been holding on. I've sort of put the glass under my nose. I kind of want to see what they're. Are you able to tell us about the botanicals and that are in this?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's a little bit different. We use a number of botanicals, but primarily we use cubeb, which I find is probably the strongest note you'll find. It was originally used. I don't know if it still is. It was originally used to flavor tobacco, and it's it's almost like a small peppercorn looking thing, like a botanical, and it adds a slight smokiness to it, and there's also we use honey as part of it, which is sourced locally to the distillery in Aberdeenshire, and that like I say, that goes in before the second distillation, so you end up with the notes of the honey, but not so much the sweetness. So it's like a flavor that comes through, but it's not overpoweringly sweet like a lot of spiced rums can be, you know.
So in terms of the actual sweetness, measured sweetness, have you done that? Is this would you call this a dry rum because of that process?
I think there is some residual sugars, but I think that primarily comes from the vanilla that we add in at the end. But prior to that, there's no added sugar.
I'm trying this live for the first time, so there's no anyone else who's sipping along with it at this point. It's nice to have that surprise, but yeah. So I don't pick this as being. There is that nice sweetness. There's a kind of creaminess on the palate. And I think the vanilla brings that.
Mm-hmm.
How many? You can tell me this to bugger off, but like how many botanicals are actually in there? Is it like 5, 6, or more?
There's five different botanicals in there.
There's a sort of chocolatey note comes over, and then there's a spice, ginger, in there, or is or is just the cubeb that I'm tasting?
It could be the cubeb. It's
I'm being mean. I'm teasing. Like starting to beat a sweat on the brow there. No, it's very cool. So did you put a distillery kit still in yourself? Are you working with a partner on this?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Distillery. Did you put your own still in for this, or are you working with a distillery to develop?
No, we're working with a distillery in Aberdeenshire that like I say, we sat down. The recipe was kind of it was a shared thing, you know. I mean, obviously the idea was from myself, but not being an expert in the distilling game, it was I took on some of the expertise of the distillery there, and we kind of sat down and worked on suggestions from them, suggestions from me of what might work. We tried a number of things, you know. And after, like I say, about 3 months, we kind of nailed it down to what we were most happy with. But yeah, that's the distillery in Aberdeenshire. They make it for us, you know.
So there's a nice sweet citrus kind of balance running through that. I quite like that. There's that peppery heat. Well, the warmth in there, but there's a lot going on there. It's very cool. So I mean, that was kind of what I was alluding to actually, was the fact that from concept to bottle is quite a compressed period of time. So this allows you to kind of get going quickly when you're working with someone like that. How long's the brand been launched?
We've been on the go now for pretty much a year now, and we've been surprised. It's been incredibly well received. My sort of introduction to what I bring in my part of this essentially is I worked so I've known Dave for 15 years. As he said, we were roamed in similar circles. I worked in pubs that he drank in effectively, so we all had similar friends, and this was in our early 20s. And then when I noticed when Dave, I was really intrigued. So my background sort of academically and professionally is in marketing and business development. So if I was to be brutally honest, when I messaged Dave saying that I loved what he was doing with the rum, but some of the visuals and the messaging was maybe a little bit below par, what I was actually looking for was some free rum. Do you know what I mean? I was like, oh, why don't I do this for a job, so why don't I give you a couple of pointers in exchange for a couple of bottles of rum?
Have we got you back, David?
Yeah, so since then, since I got a couple of free bottles of rum, me and Dave continued to speak, and then realised that there was more that my background experience could bring to the company, especially on, as I said, on the business development and marketing side of the business. That's literally what I do as a day job. So it's allowed me to come on board and help us polish up a little bit more strategy for our commercial side of the business and our marketing and communications plans, and through discussions with David, how we plan to scale and grow the business and how we plan to get the message out there.
Yeah, well, I think that's something that all new startups, I see it everywhere. The great pleasure I've had of being in the run world for so long is you see people starting, and you can have the very best product in the world, but unless you can get that message out and get in front of people.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the issue. You can, like you say, it can be fantastic, but unless people know about it, then it's just going to stay in one place,
And that's what I think is the real challenge with a lot of the times where we, especially in a company like ours, like a lot of the people exhibiting at the Rumfest, is that a lot of us are in a very similar position. Like we've got an idea and we've got a product, but what we don't have is maybe the deep pockets of some of the more established brands. So we have to be a little bit more creative and a lot of time rely on the goodwill and the support of friends and families and people like yourself, people in industry or who have influence in industry to look to try and grow. And you mentioned earlier on that the Scottish rum scene is growing and it's very lively. And I would absolutely, you see it every day in my eyes, all the people we speak to, the shops that we are stocked in, the bars that we are stocked in, exactly the same. There seems to be a really nice little Scottish rum boom just now. And I would imagine Scotland's if you had to put rum on the map, not a lot of people would be picking Scotland as a place where industry would be growing. But we spoke to a couple of people, and especially people on the Rumfest as well. And I think our philosophy on this is that what we need to be doing is all supporting each other, because we can work together and we can effectively help create an industry for rum in Scotland and the UK.
No, I completely concur. I think it's difficult to keep up with rum and new brands in the UK alone, but like Scotland seems to be an absolute epicenter of creativity at the moment, and some really great stuff coming out. It is difficult to keep up. I almost kind of feel I feel like I need to spend a bit more time in Scotland. But I mean, the other part actually is now I think we've got so many brands come to that a bar could set up with nothing but Scottish rum on the shelf, and I have a very, very impressive display of all kinds of aspects. It's not just spiced is massively popular. I guess there's the reason you start with spiced is because of the commercial potential in it, and you see that's what people are responding to. But there are producers at all levels. So do you sell yourself as a Scottish rum, or you consider yourself more of as a brand? I mean, you're not restricting yourself to being sold in Scotland only, I'm sure.
No, not at all. I mean, we're obviously we want to be for sale and available everywhere eventually, But yeah, certainly we want to keep the identity as being a Scottish brand. I know that it's the kind of twist is that it's got a bit of a Spanish name. But the story, you kind of read the story behind it, and obviously it's me. I'm Cabezon, and I'm not Spanish. So it's we want to keep the identity of being kind of Scottish produce, although we do use some botanicals that are sourced kind of around the world. But we use it's with Royal Deeside spring water, and the honey we use is from a local farm, and it's also produced in Aberdeenshire, so we want to keep that kind of the Scottish identity there for sure.
And a lot of, I think, support and weight comes from, I mean, Scotland is literally renowned worldwide for distilling. I mean, whiskey is coming from that aspect. Like Scotland knows how to distill. So I think for us, the whiskey market would, I mean, eventually one day it would be lovely to do something like that, but the investment and the time it's more of an established business for people. Whereas this is something I think for us that we genuinely believe we can play a key part in growing this part of the industry. That we obviously in no way are we saying that we would do it ourselves, but I think with working with the people and supporting the other companies that's on the Rumfest as well, we've got a great chance to kind of build each other up and use that to drive forward a new, I suppose, spirit sort of brand coming from Scotland effectively.
Yeah, there's a pang of regret. I only got 30 ml in my glass, so I want to drink a little bit more of that.
That's always a good sign, huh?
But yeah, I think so. I think when the glass empties itself quite easily, that's a good sign. How do you recommend drinking it? Have you got any suggested serves or recommendations, or just literally pour it down your throat?
Yeah, I mean, I drink it a number of ways, but that's probably because I've got so much of it. but yeah, I mean, it's I like to drink it just with ice. But I mean, I don't know whether it's sacrilegious or not, but I tend to drink whiskey with ice. I know a lot of people would frown on that, but yeah, it's I like a cold drink. But yeah, so I like to drink it just with ice, but I also I like to drink it with ginger beer as well. I think ginger beer or ginger ale is a good combination.
So I think for folks that are kind of that are watching this guy, that exactly, you've given it away a little bit, because that drink on its own, it drinks very nice on its own without any, the ones that are sort of designed to be mixed from the get-go tend to be a lot more robust, I think. And so that said it all. So we learned a lot about your thought process when you're developing it. You're drinking it neat rather than with mixers.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, we wanted something that was very drinkable neat. I wanted a quality product that was you could drink it almost like a whiskey.
But that's what I think my drinking habits change with it. So if I'm watching something like, I don't know, a film or a TV program, it's lovely just to sit and drink with a little bit of ice, something that you sip on occasionally. But I know I'm going to watch the football tonight, and this will obviously go out afterwards. So we'll all be rejoicing in Scotland's win against England this evening.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't know what football is, mate. Never heard of it.
But I know I'll be going to that. So at the same time, I'd actually sent a bottle to a friend who works in a cocktail bar, and they've been drinking it with something called Ting, which is
well, rum and Ting, that's a thing, isn't it?
Is that a thing?
Yeah, very much.
I haven't even heard of that, but apparently that works incredibly well. Do you know what loves? I mean, even with a little bit of apple juice, there's love. I think what Dave hit on earlier, which is really nice, and the difference between us and a traditional maybe spiced rum and a botanical rum is that often the spiced rums for me is the prominent flavour you get is the spice over the spirit. Whereas I think with the botanical rum, you're still getting all the notes and the delicacies of having those slightly augmented flavours through it, but the rum's still the thing that takes prominence.
Yeah, we have. I see. There's a number of ways of creating a spice rum. I think, especially when you're doing that Reader's Steward, you need to go to a completely neutral base or rely on the botanicals, or you can have a characterful rum base that comes through as the first botanical, and then other flavors are laid on top of it. And this is, it's obvious that it couldn't be a gin. This is very much a spice, is a rum base. Yeah. So so I actually, I'm sitting here going, well, maybe I'll get another sip in due course.
We'll have to get another bottle on its way. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. I'm looking on your website. The bottle's fantastic. The artwork on there. Tell us a little bit about that, if you can, please.
I mean, the idea or the concept of the design was kind of like a battle between the gods, if you like, for finding the best of the best. The sort of it's a bit of a sort of maritime scene, obviously, and I think that's always been a bit of a rum identity, as being from the sea. So this was kind of concepted between myself and a designer that we took on board to do it, and they kind of went with it. But that was the kind of the concept, was the sort of battle but the battle for quality, basically, between the
hopefully the editing team can splice a picture up on screen sort of as we're talking about it, but it is really beautifully detailed. Absolutely love the pen ink kind of style.
Yeah, I think we've had a lot of good feedback with the design. It's certainly something. It's quite different.
Cool.
Yeah, so, I think it's almost ornamental.
Yes. Wonderful. So, tell us about where we had. I'm sure there's a partner retailer for this event, but where can people pick up a bottle?
Cabezonbeverage.com.
Best place.
It's also available on Amazon as well. If you've got it, you can. It's whatever suits you, basically. But you can buy it direct from our website at cabezonbeverage.com, or you can search from Cabezon on Amazon.
But we're also stocked now across multiple independent stores as well. So across Aberdeenshire, down through Perthshire, Edinburgh. We're now just speaking to people in Glasgow. We're stocked down in England as well, in areas of the north of England, as well as places down in East Anglia. And the one thing I would add to the people, if you go to your local independent spirit store and they don't have it, nudge them to.
Ask it by name.
Just ask us that,
No, that's the hard work is just that. It's getting the rum out there and giving people the opportunity to buy it. So it sounds like you're doing really well. So what does the future hold? Just get out there and sell lots of this until you're all filthy rich?
Well, essentially, but no, I think we've got a couple of ideas in the works. We wanted to. We've actually got another a sort of aged a whiskey cask aged version of Ron Cabezon. It's just a small batch first release. It'll only be about 400 bottles, and that's going to be Ron Cabezon, the Accord edition. And the idea is it's like an agreement between two old rivals for whiskey and the rum side of things. So it's we're excited for that, and that should be ready pre-Christmas, just in time for that. And beyond that, we're also looking at perhaps doing a straight up sort of golden Caribbean style rum, not spiced, just a straight up aged rum. But that's still something in the works. But yeah, beyond that, it's like you say, it's just about getting the name out there and the brand even, and then each product kind of filtering through from there,
And I think as far as the future goes, like what we ultimately want to do is be a sustainable business. So we're in a nice point just now where a lot of businesses in the first year, as probably a lot of people know, don't make much money. Whereas at least we're now reaching that point where we're not losing money, which is a glorious. But I mean, I say that just convivially, but it's a nice turning point for us because it allows us to start investing more. It allows us, the business is starting to become self-sufficient. So we no longer, and that's a fantastic growth milestone for us. So for us, it's only building something. I think me and Dave, we've both worked in the private sector the majority of our life, the last 15 years or so, and I think the idea of doing something, and especially I think for myself coming through lockdown in the last year or so, your kind of priorities have changed over what you want from life. And I think a bit more ownership, a bit more responsibility for what we can do and to grow. Yeah, that's a big driver for, I think, both of us, is to create something that we can both have that ownership of and continue to develop as we grow.
Should we get someone on Skype then, shall we? Should we bring them up on screen with us? Sounds like someone's Skype's ringing in the background there.
It was me.
Is that you?
I do love this live nature. Yeah, it's just, you never know, do you? No one ever calls me, but you can guarantee my phone will ring in a minute. That is an interesting point you say, actually, and I almost forget about it, but you launched a business pretty much at the beginning of lockdown. I mean,
I think that's why it was such a little bit of a slow burner. Was, like I say, that the idea was born there at the end of 2019, and we worked on the recipe for the first sort of 3 months of 2020, but then it happened. So it was kind of, although we were able to do what we could within the restrictions and whatnot, but it took a further kind of 7 months before we were actually able to go to bottle. So it's and not just that, it's also the constraints we've had with trying to get it out there, because the bars have all been closed. And as much as I had a conversation with one of the guys at one of the distributors, Huffman's, that we use, and he'd said, it's a product where you might not necessarily go into a shop and say, have you got any nice new rums, and then spend the money on something that's kind of unknown. Whereas if you go into a bar, you be a bit more inclined to just ask the barman, what have you got anything new, anything different, and they'll be able to recommend, and you'll be much more kind of inclined to try something new that way. I think when people tend to go shopping, they generally stick to what they know. So we've not really had that aspect. So hopefully now, as things are kind of opening back up, we'll get a bit more exposure to the public.
And I think that you can see that where I'm based up in Aberdeen, we're now either stocked or finalising details to be stocked, probably I think across 7 or 8 different bars. One of the large compliments we got from one of the bars was that they said they were going to delist Sailor Jerry's and stock us instead. Which was nice. Like, do you know what I mean? It was compliment, and I don't imagine that's purely down to just us having a product. I imagine they've got their own reasons for whether it sells or not, or they've got an expansive selection. But it was nice to be almost spoke about just in that setting. It gives confidence, and I think now as well, we're working with a couple of guys across not just up here in Aberdeenshire, but down Glasgow, Ayrshire, kind of way, Central Belt across to Edinburgh as well, who are specialists in the entrees effectively. So we work with them to give us a little bit more exposure, because that's been a challenge on our side, as Dave said, and probably a lot of people have experienced, is that it's a gamble for people to buy something that's like moderately, say like mid-priced, because they've never had it. Like even for myself.
Yeah, well, you're paying for the full bottle then, aren't you? As opposed to a taste of it, you know.
But I'll take a £4 punt in a pub, absolutely, just to see if I like it.
Of course.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think that's where the Scottish Rum Festival itself makes it much easier, because it's a very reasonable price to try a snapshot of what's going on in the Scottish rum world right now. Excellent. But like, of course, we don't want to pressure the bars too much, because they've had such a tough time. But like now, once they're up and running, it's like, yes, come on, let's get out there and get some cocktails.
Then we'll apply a little pressure.
Everyone's got to get back to it a little bit, haven't we? So it does feel like it's feels like a rum that you could do something with, I think, in terms of cocktails. And it is that Sailor Jerry kind of story. That's really is a good compliment, because I'm sure the price difference between the two products is quite significant. And that it's not a decision that anyone's going to take lightly. So that is a really good compliment. So I'll take it as that. So what do you think then? So hopes and dreams for the next 12 months. What do you think?
Well, I think we want to get stocked in just a much more visible position. So people are aware of it as much more of a thing, So you can talk about it and say, oh yeah, someone else will mention it and say, oh yeah, I've heard that, And it's, I mean, as far as figures and whatever go, we just want to. We're just trying to work hard on gaining exposure. So I don't think we've really put any figures as such. We'd like to get maybe listed in a supermarket. I mean, it's a bit of a funny one, that, because the margins are going to be ridiculously low, and it's a bit of a. And they want it's just what's that?
They'll want lots of it as well. And
well, there's that too. So, but I mean, we're just kind of testing the water as things are opening back up. We're just trying to get back into the on-trade side of things, and then we're going to kind of play things by ear.
Oh yeah, but I think this year will be a real. What will be a great milestone at the end is the continued kind of traction that we're getting just now. Is if we continue to come to this point where it remains sustainable. But that's what we want, because right now, I suppose the ideal for me and for David as well is, how do we turn this from something that we are primarily doing in the time that we are not working into potentially something that we could do as work.
Yeah.
But the difference with that is that we own it. So I think that's, for me, for the next 12 months, is exactly that, is to get us a strong, sustainable foundation that we can continue to grow, and we can augment and advance, and we can pivot and we can change, and we can use all the superlatives you like to continue to grow. But that's ultimately it for me, is how do we make this from what is effectively a labour of love just now that we fit in between our day jobs and our families and our kids, and to something that we can use to improve our lives and give us that kind of foothold to take a lot more ownership of of the future.
I love it. Wonderful.
Yeah, better said.
Very well. That was great. I've enjoyed that. Thank you very much for your time, guys. I think feels like Rum Cabezon's a wonderful addition to the Scottish rum scene. I look forward to sipping a little bit more of it in the very near future.